Today is Wednesday, December 6th. What to know about one senator's reversal that's already impacting hundreds of service members, and some say the nation's security. Also, we'll recap a tense hearing on antisemitism, and we'll tell you how Vice President Kamala Harris again made history. Plus, how American teens' math scores compare to the rest of the world, why your medicine might come with a different price tag soon, and what's being called a radical proposal to pay college athletes. We'll explain. Those stories and more news to know in today's episode. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. The Pentagon is finally able to fill its top ranks thanks to a breakthrough in Congress. Senator Tommy Tuberville announced he would finally lift his 10-month hold on most military promotions. Now he says all military promotions at 3-star rankings and below can move forward. And they have been. The same day of Tuberville's announcement, the Senate confirmed more than 425 military nominees unanimously. About a dozen 4-star generals and admirals will still have to be voted for individually, but Senate leaders say that's actually doable and they'll schedule those votes soon. Remember, Tuberville was blocking nominees in protest of a Defense Department policy that pays for women in the military and military family members to travel for reproductive health care, including abortions. And that policy is still in place. But his hold has been drawing more and more criticism from both Democrats and his fellow Republicans. A few say Tuberville was forcing career military officers who don't make the policies to pay the price for decisions made by the Biden administration. And President Biden said the hold threatened our national security. Now the Pentagon is celebrating Tuberville's reversal, saying it's more important than ever for troops to be ready to defend the country if needed. Vice President Kamala Harris has made history again, but this time most of the credit goes to a closely divided Senate. The VP broke a nearly 200-year-old record for casting the most tie-breaking votes in the Senate. Casting tiebreaker votes is one of the vice president's duties as laid out in the Constitution. But no one has been called in as much as Harris. She cast her 32nd and 33rd votes yesterday to confirm a new federal judge in Washington, D.C. And with that, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer presented her with a golden gavel. The previous record holder was John C. Calhoun, who was vice president for 8 years between 1825 to 1832. Harris managed to surpass Calhoun's record in less than half the time he took to set it. Elsewhere on Capitol Hill, things got pretty tense as House lawmakers grilled some elite college presidents. As expected, the leaders of Harvard, MIT, and Penn defended their organizations and how they've been responding to antisemitism on campus. They highlighted steps they were taking, like increasing security and providing extra counseling and mental health support. But they acknowledged there have been instances of both antisemitism and Islamophobia on their campuses since the war in Gaza first broke out, leaving some students to feel unsafe. They explained it's a tough balance between protecting free speech and allowing protests, while also combating hate speech. But some lawmakers, Republicans especially, say their efforts have not gone nearly far enough. Some criticize the university leaders, saying they haven't been giving the same respect to Jewish people as they have for other social justice movements. They also asked for figures on how many conservative faculty members are employed by the universities, to which the president said they don't keep those kinds of figures. Lawmakers also demanded the university presidents explain how they're going to discipline students who have used hate speech. But they didn't get clear answers on that either, since the president cited students' privacy rights. The universities represented at yesterday's hearings are all private, but Congress still does have some oversight role since the schools get significant federal funding for research and student financial aid. Dozens of countries are promising to step up and cut back to tackle climate change. One of the latest pledges to come out of the UN Climate Summit is the Global Cooling Pledge. It's the first collective focus on climate warming emissions from cooling, like refrigeration for food and medicine and air conditioning. 63 countries, including the U.S., signed on, promising to lower their cooling-related emissions by at least 68% by the year 2050. This was a key objective since the UN says if no changes were made, 10% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions would come from cooling by 2050. But there are many ways to change that, like by improving energy efficiency and insulation, phasing out high-pollution refrigerants, and so on. That's not the only way countries are hoping to rein in climate change, though. At least 118 countries are also supporting another COP28 pledge to triple renewable energy and double energy efficiency rates by 2030. We have more news for you still coming up, but first, a quick break for our sponsor. I gave AG1 a try because as a busy parent and business owner, I'm always on the lookout for things that support my health and my energy levels and are convenient. So I was really intrigued by AG1. I reached out to them wanting to partner, and I've been really happy with my experience all around. I drink AG1 before I eat or drink anything else each morning, and it makes me feel ready to take on the day, especially around the holidays when I tend to eat those extra cookies and pie, and our schedules get all abnormal. It is so nice to know I have this go-to healthy habit every morning that I can come back to. AG1 replaces a lot of other supplements too, including a daily multivitamin, minerals, pre- and probiotics for gut health, adaptogens, and a greens blend, all in one scoop of powder mixed with water. So if you're looking for a simpler, effective investment for your health, try AG1 and get 5 free AG1 travel packs and a free 1-year supply of vitamin D with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/newsworthy. That's drinkag1.com/newsworthy. Check it out. Now back to the news. As expected, Washington State and Oregon have been dealing with heavy rain, flooding, and unseasonably warm temperatures. Record daily rainfall totals were reached across the Pacific Northwest yesterday, including at the Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. Now rivers are overflowing their banks. Homes, cars, and roads have been flooded. Emergency crews have been busy responding to car crashes and high water rescues. Schools have shut down. Amtrak had to cancel all passenger trains going between Seattle and Portland, Oregon until at least tomorrow because of a landslide. And sadly, the storms are being blamed for at least 2 deaths. Overall, about 4 to 8 inches have fallen so far. But another round of rain is coming in now, which could bring several more inches to the region. And millions of people from Northern California to Washington State are now under flood alerts. The nation's largest pharmacy chain is the latest to change how it sets prices for prescription drugs. CVS Health plans to get rid of the more traditional and complicated pricing model and replace it with something much more straightforward. Just the cost CVS pays, plus a markup, plus a fee. The more complex pricing system has faced political scrutiny for years for what critics say is a lack of transparency and high drug costs. Still, CVS admits this change will not necessarily lower the cost of all prescription drugs. In fact, it says while more will cost less for customers with this new pricing model, some could actually cost more. CVS is only the latest company to make this type of change. Last month, Express Scripts announced a similar cost-based model. And last year, billionaire entrepreneur Mark Cuban started an online pharmacy called Cost Plus Drugs that has the same type of simple model, selling prescription drugs at a 15% markup plus fees. CVS says its new model will start to take effect next year for some, but will really become the main pricing system in 2025. American teenagers seem to be lagging behind some of their peers when it comes to math. The results of a global exam that students in 81 countries took last year came out yesterday, and they show American 15-year-olds saw scores drop 13 points in 2022 as compared to 2018. In fact, it was one of the lowest scores ever measured for math in the United States. American teens certainly weren't alone in seeing a drop, but 31 other countries did maintain or even improve upon their 2018 math scores, like Switzerland and Japan. So the education secretary is now calling for a math revolution that would include higher-level math classes in schools, teacher training, strategies to close learning gaps, and so on. It's worth noting, even though math scores did go down, Americans' reading and science scores went up. And overall, the U.S. now ranks 26th in math, 6th in reading, and 10th in science. It's being called a groundbreaking move that could change how college athletics has operated for more than a century. The NCAA is pushing for new rules that would let schools pay college athletes directly for the first time. You'll remember the NCAA lifted the ban on athletes profiting off of their name, image, and likeness back in 2021. But that only let them make money from outside parties like advertisers, not their colleges. Now that could change. The NCAA outlined a proposal for the schools with the most resources to invest in their athletes outside of just their education. They would make up a new tier of Division I sports. The schools that opt in would have to work together to create rules that could include things like scholarship commitment, roster size, recruitment, transfers, and so on. And those rules might be different from the rest of Division I. But to be part of that tier, each school would have to put millions of dollars each year into a trust fund for athletes, and the schools would have to distribute the money to men and women equally. Now, the NCAA is asking for feedback on this proposal. Eventually, NCAA schools will have to vote to adopt the changes. But so far, there's no timeline for this. Stakeholders will meet next month at their annual convention, so we should find out more then. Of course, artificial intelligence has been a huge subject of interest in 2023, but for a lot of people, learning about it means going to what might be seen now as a more traditional source, Wikipedia. The English version of the site put out its list of 2023's most viewed articles this week, and at the very top of this list is ChatGPT, with nearly 50 million page views. The second most viewed article is about people who died in 2023. The sport of cricket came in next with 2 entries, the 2023 Cricket World Cup and the Indian Premier League. Blockbuster film Oppenheimer rounded out the top 5. That's it for the main news today, so now it's time for Work Wednesday, when we break down one interesting career or work-related news story every Wednesday. But first, a break for our sponsor. I've always experienced the benefits of stretching since I grew up dancing, then later have enjoyed yoga, but I'm now realizing that the typical stretches don't always cut it. And using bands and ropes might not actually pull your toes down and back the way a stretch therapist does it. Well, enter the Castle Flex. When I use it, my entire body feels so much better the same day, and the benefits only increase the more consistent I am with it. In fact, my husband and I both use the Castle Flex now, and we're not alone. With 40,000 customers and an average review rating of 4.9 stars, no wonder they have less than a 1% return rate. Even professional athletes use this. Plus, CastleFlex is now HSA, FSA eligible, which is especially helpful right now if you have extra funds that are use it or lose it by the end of the year. So check it out at castleflex.com. That's CastleFlex, F-L-E-X-X with 2 X's. And be sure to use our code NEWS12 for 10% off. Again, go to castleflex.com and use the code NEWS12 to get 10% off. Okay, now back to Work Wednesday. So it seems the U.S. labor market has come a long way since the era known as the Great Resignation. Now reports say too few people are leaving their jobs. As the Wall Street Journal reports, turnover has declined so much that some companies have found themselves over budget. So some now have to weigh whether to postpone projects or actually cut staff like Morgan Stanley did earlier this year. But of course, layoffs can hurt morale, so there's a lot to take into account. Other bosses are apparently worried about losing top talent, since with so many positions filled, there aren't as many opportunities for promotion. So why is it that turnover has declined so much? Well, it could be because hiring has slowed, so people don't have as many places to go. Or it might be because American workers are just happier. The Conference Board put out an annual study earlier this year that found more than 62% of workers considered themselves satisfied in 2022. And that's the highest level recorded since the survey began in 1987. The survey cited more flexible policies like remote work and extra paid time off. Well, thank you so much for joining us as part of your daily routine and for supporting us by sharing the show. We'll catch you up on more news to know tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.